Welcome to Events That Shaped the World, where we examine the moments that changed history. In our first series, Wars and Their Global Impact, we unpack what happened, why it happened, and how it reshaped politics, economies, and everyday life across the globe. Our second episode in this series is the Pearl Harbor attack, which took place in the territory of Hawaii on December 7, 1941. It became the 50th state of the United States of America on August 21, 1959. I will give you tidbits about President Roosevelt's address to the nation and also the man who started the war.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
You know, there are moments in history when, in an instant, everything changes. December 7th, 1941. That was one of those mornings. Today, we're going to dive into how just a few hours of chaos didn't just pull America into a world war, but really, it reshaped the entire planet. Let's get into it. Look at this. This is the image that's just burned into our collective memory, right? The USS Arizona was completely engulfed in fire and smoke. This single, devastatingly planned attack, it's what finally pushed a very hesitant United States into World War II. And it changed the country's path forever. You know, we throw around the phrase turning point a lot. Sometimes it's overused. But as the National Park Service points out, there's just no argument here. This was the turning point. The attack was such a profound shock that it completely flipped the script on how Americans saw their place in the world, and it happened almost overnight. So to really get a grip on this massive shift, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start by looking at the collision course that led to the attack. Then, we'll walk through what actually happened on that day. We'll see how it awakened a nation, sparked this incredible arsenal of democracy, and ultimately created a new global order. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at why that one morning really did change everything. All right, first things first. The big question. Why? Why would Japan take such an enormous gamble? This wasn't some snap decision. No, this was the boiling point of a decade of escalating tensions. So let's look at the timeline. The seeds were really sown way back in 1931, when Japan invaded Manchuria. Then in 1937, Japan goes for a full-scale invasion of China. And things get really tense. Japan is desperate for resources, especially oil, to fuel its war machine. And then comes the hammer blow. July 1941. The US and its allies hit Japan with a crippling oil embargo. That was the point of no return. From then on, war seemed almost guaranteed. By November, peace talks had completely broken down, and a secret Japanese carrier fleet was already slicing through the Pacific, heading straight for Hawaii. So you can see you've got these two goals that are just completely at odds with each other. For Japan, it was all about survival and expansion. They felt they had to seize the oil and resources in Southeast Asia to keep their war in China going. And what was the biggest obstacle in their way? The US Pacific Fleet. Now on the US side, the goal was to stop Japan, but to do it with economic pressure, with that oil embargo, not with guns. With neither side willing to back down, they were on a collision course. It was, as one person put it, a foregone conclusion. Like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this to refresh your memory of the events that shape the world. And that brings us to that Sunday morning, a day of infamy. That secret Japanese carrier force, having crossed thousands of miles of ocean completely undetected, is now just over 200 miles north of Oahu. They're ready to strike. Okay, but this raises a huge question, one that people have argued about forever. If everyone knew war was coming, why was America so unprepared at Pearl Harbor? I mean, US intelligence expected an attack somewhere for sure, but they were looking at the Philippines or maybe Malaya. So how did they miss the main event? Well, the short answer is a massive, and I mean massive, underestimation of the enemy. US military leaders just didn't think Japan could do it. They thought Japan didn't have the fuel capacity for a strike all the way across the Pacific. They were totally focused on Southeast Asia. Honestly, they just assumed Japan wouldn't dare to risk such an expensive experiment. It's incredible. But because of this, the alerts on the base weren't for an air raid, they were for sabotage. So they parked the planes wingtip to wingtip to make them easier to guard, which of course made them the perfect targets from the air. And then it happened. Just before 8 a.m., the sky filled with Japanese planes. This photo here is unbelievable. It was actually taken from one of the attacking planes. You can see the smoke already starting to pour from Hickam Field. The bombs started falling, and the torpedo planes were lining up their targets, the battleships on Battleship Row, and the damage was just instant and catastrophic. On the left, you see the USS Arizona, just hammered by torpedoes, sinking right there in the harbor. In just a matter of minutes, 5 of the 8 battleships at Pearl Harbor were either on the bottom or on their way there. But you know, even in all that horror, you get these incredible stories of heroism. This is one of my favorites. A young pilot, Second Lieutenant George Welch, who'd been out late at a party, was probably a little hungover and was still wearing his tuxedo pants. He and another pilot scrambled to get their P-40 fighters airborne. As he's taking off, he supposedly says, "Us Texans like to die with our boots on." He then went up and shot down 4 enemy planes. Just incredible. But those acts of bravery, as amazing as they were, couldn't stop the slaughter. In less than 2 hours, it was all over. And the cost? It's just a staggering number. 2,403 Americans were killed. You know, tactically, the attack was a brilliant success for Japan. But strategically, it was one of the biggest blunders in military history. Because it did something that months and months of political debate could never do. It united the United States with a single, furious purpose. It's hard to remember this now, but before that morning, America was a deeply divided country. There was this huge, powerful isolationist movement, dead set against getting involved in another foreign war. But the attack, a sneak attack on American soil, it just vaporized that opposition overnight. A switch was flipped. As one historian said, it created a fierce commitment to victory. The debate was simply over, and as the fires were put out, the heavy, grim reality sunk in. This photo of sailors honoring their fallen comrades, it just says it all. It was a moment of profound national grief, but also a moment where resolve hardened into steel. The country was now in a two-front war against the Axis powers, and it was going to take a national effort on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And that resolve is what turned a nation in shock into the most powerful war machine the world has ever seen. This is the story of how America truly became the arsenal of democracy. Think about this. Just 1 month after the attack, President Roosevelt goes before the country and lays out the challenge. And he's not talking about small adjustments. He's demanding astronomical quantities of weapons, planes, tanks, ships. The goal was insane, to outproduce the entire Axis powers combined. And the crazy thing is, they did it. The speed of this transformation is just mind-boggling. The entire American economy was rewired for war. The car factories in Detroit? They stopped making cars and started pumping out tanks and bombers. The steel industry? All in on defense. And get this, when Japan cut off the supply of natural rubber from Asia, the US literally invented a synthetic rubber industry out of thin air. Meanwhile, the oil fields in Texas went into overdrive, pumping enough oil to fuel the entire Allied war effort. If you want to understand the scale, just look at shipbuilding. Remember, the Pacific Fleet was in ruins. So what did American shipyards do? They built around 12,000 ships during the war. I mean, look at that jump on the chart. It's a colossal number that just completely dwarfed what they were doing before the war. And that industrial might is what ultimately gave the Allies control of the seas. But this incredible economic power didn't just win the war. It completely reshaped the world's financial system for generations to come. So, as the war was winding down, the Allied leaders, with the US in the driver's seat, got together at a place called Bretton Woods. Their goal was to design a whole new global economic system. They wanted to make sure the kind of economic chaos that led to the Great Depression and then to the war itself could never happen again. It created two new powerful institutions, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, to keep currencies stable, and the World Bank to help fund reconstruction. The whole thing was built on this new idea of global cooperation, and the main American driver behind this whole system was a Treasury official named Harry Dexter White. He was the one who really championed this vision, arguing that building a healthy global economy wasn't just a nice thing to do, it was absolutely essential for America's own best interests. But it wasn't a simple agreement. You basically had two competing visions. On one side was Harry Dexter White's American plan. On the other was the brilliant British economist John Maynard Keynes, who had a much more radical idea for a global bank and even a new world currency. A key difference was that Keynes argued that both wealthy and poor nations should share the burden of fixing economic problems. In the end, White's more modest American plan, which put more of the responsibility on nations in debt, is the one that largely went out. And here's the bottom line. The war that America was so violently dragged into at Pearl Harbor ended with the United States as the undisputed economic superpower of the world. Its factories were untouched by bombs, and its leadership created this new financial system that put the US dollar right at the center of everything. And for the most part, that's where it has stayed ever since. Like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this to have a feel of the events that shaped the world. So this all brings us right back to the beginning, to that one Sunday morning, and its complicated, lasting legacy. Today, the USS Arizona Memorial floats above the wreckage of the battleship. It's a solemn, powerful place where over 1,100 sailors and Marines remain entombed. More than 1 million people visit every year, a testament to the compelling and enduring power of this event in the American memory. When you boil it all down, the legacy of Pearl Harbor is really one word: transformation. It unleashed this incredible mobilization of American resources, not just factories and soldiers, but as one historian put it, a change in the country's sci-tech resources, a change in its soul. That mobilization didn't just end the Great Depression and win a world war. It set the stage for America's role on the world stage for the rest of the 20th century, and really, right up to today. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. A question about history itself. How can a single day, a single event, a deep, painful scar on a nation's memory, continue to shape how that country sees the world and its own role in it all these decades later? Hideki Tojo, born in Tokyo in 1884, rose from a stern Meiji-era military upbringing to become Japan's wartime prime minister, the leader who ordered the December 7, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor that thrust the United States into World War II, and whose hardline vision for a Japanese-dominated Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere shaped the empire's most aggressive actions. After Japan's defeat, he attempted suicide, was tried, and was executed by hanging on December 23, 1948, after which his cremated remains were secretly scattered over the Pacific Ocean east of Yokohama, a fact only uncovered 75 years after. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode where we unpack how wars reshape economies, borders, and everyday life.